Okay.
You know,
Do you anticipate yourself being a leader at some point in the future?
uh, that I don't even sit down and think about that.
No.
I don't ever
It's
think about
it's
that.
not your desire. That's not your focus and your goal.
I just try and do what I try and use, my abilities, my connections, and my heart to do things that I
You
know
know
that
that
are right
benefits
to
your
do.
people.
Yeah.
Okay.
More than that, I don't really think about because I mean, there was nothing in it for me
Right.
besides helping my people.
Right.
Right. And, I allow the Holy Spirit to be able to use me
Right.
as a vessel. So I know
Exactly.
it's not me. I mean, if you ask me right now about anything that I did up until now, all, I could have never did that
Right.
myself. So I know there had to be
You were
a
guided
different,
and led and
I didn't know what in the world I was doing.
right.
I really didn't. I really didn't. It wasn't that I really, when I went back and I looked at the process, and I looked at all that we had done, I couldn't have did if it was just me.
Right.
That wasn't my doing.
Right.
That wasn't my doing. And
That
I tell
was a higher
anybody
force.
that was a higher force that was leading the way,
And
that
you
was
were
directing me, and
distract you from your path. Shalom, 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 everyone. I would like to welcome you to today's episode of Living Chronicles. And I am so honored and humbled to be here with who I call the young ambassador, Ahk Ashriel. So welcome to Living Chronicles.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
I love this setup. I said it off camera, and I'm gonna say it on camera. I love this setup. I ain't been this excited for the podcast ever.
Well, hallelujah, hallelujah. I'm going to read a little bit of his bio, then we're going to go into the actual story, okay? So we have Ahk Ashriel, the son of Mazavda and Sarvakoria, okay? And he is 33 years old, okay, 33 years young.
He is young, right.
He has one child. Welcome to parenthood. He's
Thank
a new
you.
father. Your life will never be the same.
Oh,
I guarantee
I can
you.
feel it right now.
You have a bane or bot. Oh, your life really is not getting ready to be the same.
Girl,
That's just one thing.
yeah.
Daughters. Ahk Ashriel has done a lot of things. So based on his bio, some of the things are he was a spokesperson for the YOM, the Youth on the Move, in his youth. He was selected to represent Israeli youth in 4 international youth conferences abroad, so he's traveled extensively. He compiled the pamphlet and led the efforts to attain citizenship for soldiers and their immediate families. He was and is extremely instrumental in leading the fight against the deportation of the saints from the land from 2021, and we're going to talk about that definitely because we have a significant victory. Yes. So we definitely going to talk about that during the podcast. And he has invited and hosted many public figures and celebrities to the community, including even today. He had somebody before me. He's so busy. I'm just blessed to have him that, make time to stop.
Of course.
Including Tiffany Haddish, Kenny Hamilton, Emmanuel Akko, Noah Tishby, Knesset member Nama Lazimi, and artist Kosha Deals.
Kosha Deals.
Okay. All right. So that is some of his bio. And we're going to jump right into, Ahk Ashriel. Who is Ahk Ashriel? What has he been doing? What is his life like? His piece of the puzzle in the building of this kingdom. So let's start with your birth story. Normally I ask everybody, how they got here, their background story, but you were born here.
Oh, born here. Yeah.
So what's your birth story?
Man, it's a complicated one.
Okay.
And I just know it from my Ima.
From your Ima, right?
Besides the fact that she shared it with me, she shared every opportunity she get with anybody who's willing to listen.
Okay.
Because it was a significant one.
Right. Ima was deported, right?
She was deported. She was deported in '86. Mm-hmm. Right, and then she came back to Israel, and I was born in Israel in 1991. She was gone for 5 years.
Oh, okay.
She's gone for 5 years, and then she came back in '91, and I was born here in '91. And she was 46 when she 47 as a matter of fact when she got pregnant with me. Mm-hmm. And they told her she had a heart condition. Uh-huh. Right, so they told her she had a 50-50 chance to live.
So was it like you have a choice of maybe you should abort?
That's what they were saying. They were saying you need to abort, because having a 50-50 chance to live.
Right.
We think that it's probably more to the 50 chance that you may not live.
Right.
And so you need to go ahead and abort. And then she had a heart condition. Mm-hmm. On top of that, and then. Everything that could have been complicated happened.
Everything that could have happened did happen.
Happened. Mm-hmm. And then when I was born, first I was placenta previa. Like the placenta was in front of me.
Oh, okay.
Right. I was breached. When I was born, they had to resuscitate me because I wasn't breathing. Wow. They said that because of her age. And because, of her physical condition, mm-hmm. the most likely I may be Down syndrome.
Ain't nothing down about you, brother.
So, and these were all of the things that had happened all throughout. And, but at the end of the day, it came through. And when I hear the story each time that it's really touching to me because
you were supposed to be here.
Where?
The universe. Everybody says Yah. I don't necessarily say Yah. In fact, the meaning of your name is Yah is my happiness, or approved by Yah. So you were definitely approved by Yah to be here. With all that you have accomplished and all that you have done, and just leading the charge in so many things, man. Didn't make it easy.
No. And then my Ima, she had brought some small earrings, mm-hmm. right? Because she said she was 100% sure that she was having a girl. She just knew she was having a girl, and she had bought these earrings, and she had brought these little bracelets, mm-hmm. And then, she had the Holy Spirit had spoken to her and told her she would have to have a male child, uh-huh. right? And this male child, she said, would be great in the midst of his people, and she should watch him closely. And so, she said that's what she did. And then, all of these complications came along, kind of, trying to take off her path and possibly, prevent me from coming. I'm just thankful that she, that she went through with it or whatever, with everything, that went wrong. With all of what they were trying to convince her to do. I'm sure she has some concerns as well.
Of course.
You know,
I mean, somebody tells you 50-50, you might not make it.
and a heart condition.
And a heart condition. I mean, that's something to consider. And your age already.
And your age,
you know?
yeah,
So but your Ima has always been very determined and set. And whatever the Holy Spirit tells your Ima to do
it. She do it.
We hear on Ima's out there.
Yes,
She's
ma'am.
doing it.
Yeah. So she did it. She did it. She came through.
And that has been our blessing. Wow.
That's my blessing.
Wow. I mean, it just gives you chills. I don't know about y'all, but it gives me chills. That is something. So growing up here, what was that like? I mean, I see that you were a spokesperson for the YWAM. Okay, before you got to the YWAM, I'm sure as a little kid, what kind of little kid were you? Were you running around? You getting into everything?
They said I was a little rascal, right? They said I was a little rascal. Besides the fact they said at a super early age, because remember, my Abba, he was always on mission.
He was always
right?
gone,
or
yes.
he was, in front of the rock. And then my Ima, she was out
selling and working and
donations or whatever.
Right.
So they weren't really present like that,
right?
You know,
right.
So my twin sisters, Shrumia, they was the ones who actually raised me.
Okay.
So, they were the ones who kind of give me more stories of what it is that I was doing. So they'll be able to give you a better account. But, they did say that at a super early age, I was already, I'd already knew how to spell my name.
Okay.
I knew what the meaning of my name was. And I knew when my birthday was. And so anybody who was willing to listen,
you would tell them.
I would just go up to them. If you smiled at me, when I'm coming at you, and I'm about to share all this information with you, and it went just like this. And I mean, I don't remember saying it when I was young, but somehow it's still a memory, in my mind that Shalom, my name is Ashriel.
And so you've been doing it from then all the way up until now.
My name is Ashriel, and my birthday is April 13, 1991. And the meaning of my name is Yah's my happiness. That's all I knew at that point.
So you just had a birthday recently. So you
just had a birthday. Yeah, just a couple days ago.
Right.
And then and then slowly but surely, I was the one who would go and bust the eggs in front of the rock, because you remember we had chicken.
Oh yeah, and you would go bust the eggs.
And I was go bust it.
And did you get in trouble?
All the time. All the time. I used to get 40 lashes often. I guess that was probably the first relationship that I had with Abba.
This little boy out here always
put me. And I remember he had this little pink chair that he would put inside of the shower, and I would have to sit there until my parents come and get me.
Wow.
Right. I remember this just like it was yesterday.
Wow.
Every other day.
Every other. You didn't learn. You was a hard head.
I was a hard head. And then if that wasn't enough, then I go to the back of the rock, and they had that date tree.
Okay.
Yeah, so I climb up there and pull the dates down off the tree, and then throw them at the window. Throw them. I don't know. I don't understand. I was always moving around and just enjoying myself and enjoying the life. I just had a lot of energy, but I had fun though.
Right.
I was enjoying myself.
I guess busting eggs and stealing the dates.
I had a good time. I really did. When I look back on my childhood, I had a pretty meaningful one. And then growing up in the house with a lot of my siblings, or whatever.
How many siblings you have all together?
Well, today is 14 of us.
Okay.
But my sister passed away when I was 20, when I was 19. And then Abishai passed away, another one of my brothers,
right.
in 2022, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
And then, 2020, it had to be, during Corona. And then another one of my brothers, Zohar, passed away just 2 years ago.
Okay.
So,
so there's 14
So
of you
all together today, I think it's 12.
Okay.
It's 12, but I still consider them as my
right,
siblings or whatever.
Absolutely.
So like they're not gone like that.
Right,
they still,
right.
They're still present, but like physically, they're no longer with us at the moment.
Yeah.
Because it was, I'm actually the only child from my parents,
from Sister Racayah and
Imazab, because Imazab had her own set of children from her previous marriage,
right.
and Abba had his other children from Ima
Right.
Penina. And then once, they got together and they brought me, but then later on, Abba had another 2 children by Ima Yoila Dagana.
Okay. Okay.
So, we count them in.
Well,
Yeah, of
absolutely.
course.
Okay, wonderful. Okay. So the YOM, you spokesperson for the YOM. So we know from a young age you were already talking and telling anybody that smiled at you. So I guess that's how you got into being the spokesperson for the YOM. Is that how that happened? And first of all, let me go back. You went to school at Beit Sefer Akfa?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah,
your entire 12 years.
My
at Beit
entire
Sefer
12 years.
Okay.
I think we probably were the first class that was actually a Kita Aleph in Agva.
Oh, really?
I think we were the first class because Agva opened in 1993. Didn't it?
I don't remember when they opened.
Agva, I think, opened in 1993. We went to Agva in Kita Aleph in 96.
Okay.
So I think we were the first Kita Aleph class in Agva, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, I mean, you matriculated from Gan through, Agva, and completed, my studies in Agva.
Studies there. Yeah.
And then went to the military and then finished that. I guess we'll get to all those
Yeah,
things
we're
afterwards.
we're gonna do it chronologically.
Yeah.
So YOM, what was that like? You were on the recommitted youth. Were you in the youth count? The YOM
I was
council.
on council. I was on YOM council.
So what was the YOM council? What were some of the things that you all did, and how did you become the spokesperson?
Our main focus was really to be able to provide, something for the youth, a platform for the youth, and because the YLM was started way before us, right?
Right.
But it was that just continuation of providing a platform and an environment for the youth to be able to keep them active, keep them involved, keep them interested in everything that's going on in the community. Bring them together for for YLM meetings and other things. Put on events, in the evening time or whatever, outside Chef Evanim and other things, to be able to keep everybody active during the summer times or whatever. And all in all, just that engine for the youth.
Right. So let me ask you this: I know you're not down here like that now to see what's going on a daily basis, but do you know if the YOM are still functioning on that level, because we're so spread out? In your day, everybody pretty much lived on the Kifar. Now we're spread out all over the city, and it seems like the children are just not as involved. Do you know anything about that, or can you speak on that?
Well, I mean, we see, even though you don't have to necessarily be here, but you see obviously that more the youth are more spread out. Looking, for things to get into, looking for things to do, because it's not, you don't really have that centralized element no more, like that is providing, that type of environment for the youth to be able to, thrive in, to operate in, to bring themselves to be strengthened in, to reach their potential in or whatever. So it's not a lot going on, and so as a result of that, I think that a lot of the youth are kind of drifting off to other places, right? Because whenever you don't have anything that's keeping them engaged, then when you have other things on the opposite side that is pulling on them, then obviously that's just going to win by default, right? Not necessarily that they want to choose those things, but
there's
you don't have alternatives or whatever. Then if these are the two choices, and then one of them are not functioning like that, then the other one just win by default. And so but I think one of the greater things in our time was that because we were all here, together,
in one
location. And we were just, enjoying the simple things, coming together and playing Chef Evanim. You had the King's Court with the, with the basketball court out there.
You had the gulo that the boys used to play
the boys played. We played ball, and the girls came out to to watch and to play gumi and to play double dutch and hopscotch and all of those things. So everybody was out there together. Because everybody was already out there, it automatically caused everybody to want to be around, because if this is where everything is going on at, then you quite naturally want to be there. So even people who were living off the Kifar, they would come to the Kifar specifically and try and stay for a long time or whatever, so they can be able to enjoy these things, just enjoy the presence of everybody. But now when that presence is not centralized anymore, then a couple people over here trying to get something done, a couple people over here trying to get something done, and so it's not really as strong as it was before. And because it's not as strong as it was before, then people were getting into a lot of other things, that are very unfortunate,
Right.
in my opinion.
Right,
And
I
so,
agree.
And so, I think that was one of the blessings of our time, was that, people say we were closed off or whatever, but I think, us actually being shielded from a lot of things. So those things weren't as interesting to us,
Right,
as they are
right.
today.
They are today,
You know,
because
you asked about the YM Council. We were fully invested in making something happen right here for
Right,
ourselves.
right.
And because we were fully invested in making something happen for right here, even the little parties that we would put on,
Right.
on the weekends, Yom Kamashi, Moshe Shabbat or
Right.
whatever, down at the pool,
Okay.
at the hilltop,
Right,
down
right.
in the Mikla.
Right.
We had parties. Everybody come together and have a good time or whatever, and just being in that concentrated environment,
Right.
It allowed us to, first of all, know where everybody is,
Right.
what everybody's doing or whatever, and then secondly, it allowed us to be strengthened by one another, right? Because spending enough time with each other, even if somebody was kind of drifting off or whatever, then we could be able to strengthen, that person
One
or
another.
whatever, so that we can be able to keep them tight.
Right,
we say.
right. Keep everything tight.
But today, today,
it's
unfortunately,
it's so different. So one of the questions that I usually ask at the end, but since we're talking about it, I'll ask now. What advice would you give to the youth? We spent a lot of years building this, and we see youth drifting. They're getting involved in the IDF, in what is it called when you do the year Shanat Shirut. Then they have something that they do during the school hours. I mean, after school hours. Naomi did it. What was this thing called? Where they meet like 2 or 3 times a week, the different students from different schools. It's like a survival kind of course.
I know what you're talking about. I know what you're talking
So,
about.
I mean, there are so many things that the children are involved in. So what would we, or what could we say to the youth, or how could we encourage them to continue to build what has been established for them?
One of the things that I think we need to really pay close attention to is the fact that the first generation of the pioneers, they made a conscious decision and a choice to leave the environment they were in and to create something that they felt that was better for them, right, more conducive to what it was that they were looking, to achieve. But then the consequent generations, they didn't necessarily choose like that. It was you didn't have a choice.
Right, you were born into
it, or you were brought here at a young age or whatever. So you didn't necessarily choose that. And so
now they're making their own choices.
Some people are making their own choices, or and I would say, on the flip side of it, the world today is not what it was before.
Not at all.
Social media is super strong. Yes. It has a super strong effect on children.
And especially when they started 3, 4, 5 years old, getting the cell phone and everything, that they're just so addicted, literally addicted to it.
And it's addictive.
Yeah.
And and they put a lot of emphasis on influencing specifically the youth. One of the things that they say that TikTok is mainly, I think they have about a few billion users on TikTok, but they said it's mainly geared towards children from the age of 13 to 20, right? So, I mean, this algorithm is targeting this specific demographic for a purpose of, affecting, their mentality, affecting their choices, programming them or whatever, and if you don't have nothing that's as strong or stronger to pull from the other end, then that side wins by default.
Right.
And so as a result of that side is winning by default. But also, I think we should look at it from this perspective that that most of the things that you see playing out with the youth today is a symptom of something that may be, undergirded that we really haven't dealt with, and they're just kind of living it out, so you can't necessarily blame them.
No blame, definitely
like
no blame, no judgment, and that is a very valid point, because you can't really bring someone back to something or encourage them to be a part of if they have certain feelings about it that are not necessarily positive. So you have to definitely, you cannot disregard the symptoms.
No, you can't.
And too often, some older people want to disregard the symptoms. They want to use well, just get over it, or just deal, and that's not realistic.
That's not how trauma works.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's not how trauma. And so a lot of people, are dealing with a lot of, because the older generations were focused on really building the community and establishing what we have, that at times, and I don't think it was on purpose, but at times they may have neglected,
made mistakes. And, did the best that we could, but that does not mean that we did not make mistakes along the way. And if we, as the older generation, do not have the humility and the courage and the understanding that we have to go back and try to fix some of that, if we're not willing to work hand in hand to do that, we just widen the gap.
Yeah, and it's playing out with the youth today. Yeah. And if you ask them, most of them are not even aware of what it is that they're experiencing, right? They not, some of them are not even making conscious decisions, right? They're unconscious with their decision making, right? And a lot of them are making a lot of mistakes, right? In that, and so going back to the drawing board to really understand, how did it come to a point where it is now that people are abusing certain substances and other things like that? What went wrong, and how do we fix those things, as opposed to just ignoring it, because it's not going to disappear. And as a matter of fact, I think it'll
continue to
it'll get worse with with the following generations, because if you don't deal with the problem, then the problem it begins spread.
It can't fix itself.
It becomes worse. Yeah. It becomes worse, and so that's just how I see it. And I mean, maybe I'm wrong. I don't think I'm wrong.
I agree with you. So we're both wrong together, or either we're both right together.
Maybe we're both right, and I don't. And there's no problem with that. I mean, I think it's great to be, to go back and to reassess.
But wait a minute, didn't Abba say? You may not have heard it. I think it was when he was teaching God, the Black Man of Truth. He said you have to reassess everything down to a shoelace. So if you got to look at a shoelace and reconsider that, you have to reconsider every aspect of everything, and that's not just in the world outside. What worked, what didn't work, why didn't it work? It's not judgment. It's constructive criticism. It's figuring out how. If you make something, if you're going to make a product and you're trying to make millions of dollars and it doesn't work, you go back to the drawing board and you figure out why it didn't work, because you want to make that $1 million. Okay, our children are that $1 million. We got to go back to the drawing board.
These are valuable, valuable lives or whatever, and a lot of lives, unfortunately, drifted off and were experienced what they experienced or whatever, and so as a result of that, they they hold a lot of a lot of hard feelings inside because of things they experienced or whatever. And like I say, I mean, some of it, may have been justified, some of it not. But at the same time, that don't really matter. I think what matters most, or what should matter most, is trying to fix it so that we can be able to, put the community, or at the least put the idea back on this correct path. Because a lot of those, older people, sad to say, but they pass it on.
It's like a marathon. If you run in a marathon and we didn't ran, okay, my leg is over. I got to pass the baton.
Pass it. You got
But either if I don't want to pass the baton and I keep holding on to it, or either there's nobody there to receive it. We lost the race.
Yeah. And one thing about those type of races is that even if you don't want to, the world is changing, and whether you accept it or not, believe it or not, agree with it or not, like it or not, that don't really make a difference. It's changing. And so you have one or two options. You have either adopt to the change and make it to our benefit, or just get trampled over.
Exactly.
But this way or that way, it's changing, and it has to change, because nothing remains the same. Ever, not even not even out here in nature. I mean, things change. Seasons change.
Exactly.
Every life changes. Life cycles change. And so if everything is changing, and now need to adapt to this new reality, then we also need to adapt to this new reality. Not to say that we need to absolutely neglect everything that's been the foundation of what we built. But I mean, I can just give you one example. For example, for years we used to burn food on the Passover. Right? But then we got older and we got smarter and we understood, that food is expensive. This is something that we need to go back and reconsider. And then we reconsidered it. And then we came back with the idea of, let's do the spiritual burning, and somebody could have saw that and said, okay, well, this is, a total neglect of our tradition,
culture,
our culture,
blasphemy,
and, whatever.
And I'm sure there were people who probably didn't agree with it.
Possibly. But also you had those who were like, nah, this makes sense. It's a new time. It's a new day now. So we need to adjust now to this new time, this new day, to allow ourselves to be relevant, in this cycle now. Because even I think that's even one thing that sometimes when you are no longer relevant because you live in, a reality that's no longer relevant, then people who you want to affect as well, you don't have that ability to affect them when you trying to relay some information to them in a way that don't nobody, you want to give a class for 2 hours, but then you have, TikTok videos and others
that's
to
15
seconds or whatever, then you have to, find a way to be able to get this information to them, within that, because this is the instant generation or whatever. And so nobody's going to sit down for 2-3 hours to listen to try and get the message. If you don't know how to put it into, what they call the elevator pitch, then you may as well just let it alone, because the world is moving in that way, and you have to also be able to, because everybody's competing now for the mind, especially the minds of the youth. And I think I saw a video one time when Sister Racayah was talking about the importance of radical change, right? And he was saying that this radical change would have to, he said it would have to be serious concentration on the youth, because he said the old heads, they're not going to get it, but the youth are the ones who are going to be responsible now to be able to carry this idea, ahead. And so unless you put that serious concentration on the youth in a way where the youth could be able to absorb it, understand it, and then go back and regurgitate it or act it out, or present it in a way where their peers could be able to also connect to it, then you're just counterproductive. And unless you you don't have to admit to the fact that you're counterproductive. You just have to look at the results. And the results can be able to speak for themselves. So, it's not, and this is not it's not a competition on, who's right and who's wrong. But, it's an opportunity for us to be able to go back to the drawing board and reassess some things.
Definitely remains.
I think they have to be done, and they will be done. I don't think there's no other way. There's no other way. And change, I think one thing about change is that it happens in a rapid pace. And sometimes if you haven't adjusted to whatever, then you won't even pay attention that you're years behind still.
You look up
because the world has changed, so much. And we talk about the fact that the world is going to fall and there's going to be a change, but we used to think, at least I used to think, that when you say that America is falling and the West is falling and all of these, then I used to think that it was just going to burn and and go up in flames. Everybody was going to die and then whatever. But it ain't going to happen like that. No. There's a change of a paradigm. There's going to be a change of a mindset, a change of of a rulership, a change of thoughts, of change of ideas or whatever. And we need to a change of ideas that while that change is taking place, you're going to have to put something else instead. Right? If you don't present something, it's not just there's not going to be a vacuum. Right? Something is going to come into that space instead. Right. And unless you present an alternative, then somebody else got something that they're going to put right there in place or whatever. So it's us, or everybody's competing for that spot to be the ones, that affect the minds of the people in the greatest way. And so, we have to now look at it from that perspective. We need to be a light to the nations and Israelites and all those things. It would have to happen by us providing an alternative, right? But not only providing an alternative, because you can have the greatest product in the world, but if nobody know about it almost, then that is very much irrelevant. So take that idea, take so many of the things that we've developed that are so good and great, and polish them up a little bit. and then present them as an alternative, not to the world first, but to our people first, right? To our people, affect our people first in such a way where they want to be more involved. They want to be more active. They want to do greater things. They want to be the ones who lead us into the tomorrow. They want to be the ones who are, who are proud to say, I'm a Hebrew, I'm an Israelite. This is my identity. Who are proud to, to present themselves in such a way. And it may not be necessarily what we may have thought it should be in the 70s, 80s, 90s.
It may not look the way it looked back then. It's going to look different. You spoke a little bit about Hebrewisms. I would like for you at this time, if you could, just give a little explanation. And I know it's extensive, and I really hope that I'm planting a seed. I'm planting a seed because it needs to be an actual course for our children, And I really wish that we had a way to get back into Ahk and really have like junior school of the prophets. It needs to be from middle school through high school, because we have to, I don't like using the word indoctrinate, but we have to teach our children, the values of life that, anyway. Hebrewisms. Just if you were teaching a child basic understanding of what it means to be a Hebrew, how would you do that?
I would first. I'll separate the three concepts. Well, I think there are four concepts.
Okay.
Right. There's a concept of a Hebrew, the idea of an Israelite, the identity of a Judean, and then there's a Jew.
Okay.
Right. So being a Hebrew is not necessarily just a bloodline, but it's an idea.
Okay.
Because Abraham, he was a Hebrew not because he had come from a Hebraic bloodline.
Okay.
His family was from Ur of the Chaldeans, so that'll be a Chaldean ancestry in that case.
Okay.
If we were just talking about your actual progeny. But he was a Hebrew because of a change that he had made.
A choice that he made.
A choice that he made to change something, about him that was different from the environment that he was living in, that caused him now to be, set aside, to be sacred.
Okay.
Right. And so him, changing those things. I mean, and it wasn't just, going from the many gods to the one God, or just changing, from Ur of Chaldeans and coming into Canaan's land. It wasn't that. It was an entirely different idea.
Okay.
That he had accepted, from God, and that he was prepared to be able to now push forward to the nations. And so that's why when you speak about Abraham, then he was, it was written that he will be a father to many nations. Right. And in his seed would all the nations be blessed. Okay. Because he had accepted something now that will allow the world to go on a different course than what it was during his day. Right. And we can also look at it today. We see the world going in one way, and then if you have those who are prepared to go in a different way, and Abraham wasn't just a person. Right. It was an entire civilization. Okay. That he had represented. Right. But you just call that name because even Adam and Eve. Right. They say Adam and Eve and called their name Adam. Right. This was an entire civilization of people that had one mind, one thought, one idea, going in one direction. And so Abraham then had a child, but the promise was given to his child Isaac, right? He had other children, right? I think Abraham had 9 children or so, by Keturah and by Sarah and by Hagar, and so he didn't have just one child, right. But the promise was going to move through that child that was called Isaac, right? That when Sarah was told that she was going to have a child at 90 years old, she laughed about it, right? So that's where his name comes from, and so he bore children as well, and one of those children was Jacob, who was also to continue that seed, not through the seed of Esau, but through the seed of Jacob. Right. And so Jacob, when his name changed to Israel, it was because he had then wrestled with an angel, right? But that wrestling with the angel wasn't necessarily just fighting or whatever. It was a wrestling with an idea in your mind, and and making a choice to be able to continue on a specific path, or to neglect that path and do something else altogether different. So now you wrestling with an angel, but that wrestling is in your mind, right? And so he was wrestling with an idea in his mind. Should I go this way? Should I go that way? Right? And then when he finally, overcame, whatever was trying to hold him back, then his name was changed to Israel. Right? That he managed to maintain, through that period of time. And then he had children, right? And now this is where the concept then changed from just the idea of Hebrew as an identity, or as an idea, to identity, right? The identity began then with Jacob and his 12 children, who were the 12 tribes then. So this is the beginning of that progeny, of that identity going through Jacob now. So those 12 tribes of Israel will then be, those tribes that at the least, based on our Bible, were to carry out a mission, right? And each one of each of the tribes had their own specific mission, right? But then we go through, that Israelite identity, and then we arrive to the tribal identity, right? The tribal identity now that we're looking at, necessarily everybody together are Israelites, right? But not everybody together are of the seed or of the tribe of Judah, right?
So all 12 tribes.
So all 12 tribes together would be the nation of Israel, or the Hebraic nation. Right? But then the tribe of Judah had a specific responsibility, right, to carry that scepter and to bring, he was to bring the civilization or the Messianic civilization, as you would call it. So that was Judah's responsibility. And by us being from the tribe of Judah, then that's our responsibility to take that on. Now, you have the idea of a Jew, but not necessarily connected to your tribal affiliation, but is more so your subscription to a religion, right? To the religious ideologies of what Judaism represents. And that religious ideology is actually something that had developed over a period of time after the fall of the Second Temple. And it was, the Pharisees were the ones who had actually taken on, that responsibility, they said, to continue on what the priests were doing in the temples. But then they developed, this idea of rabbinical Judaism, that now the rabbis are vested with the power that the ancient the ancient prophets had before. So it's no longer in the hands of the prophets. Now it's more so in the hands of the rabbis. And so they developed that concept over years, right? And then they kind of developed into what they call the Talmud, right? Which is a mixture of the Gemara and of the Mishnah. You put those two together, and then you have what is called Talmud. And Talmud is basically conversations between rabbis who are coming together and sitting down and talking about scriptures, but not only the scriptures, they're talking about the interpretations of scriptures, going all the way back. And so then it get lost. And so, that's a major issue. So we don't practice Judaism as a religion. We are Israelites because we come from the tribes of Israel. And those of us who are of the tribe of Judah, then we're Judeans. But you also had all of those who were residing in the area of Judea after the split of Israel from Judea. You had those who were residing in the area of Judea, and they were called Judeans. So when you look, for example, in the book of Esther, when Mordecai is referred to, as Mordecai the Jew, right? They're not saying Mordecai the Jew because he practiced Judaism. They're saying Mordecai the Jew or Judean because he resided in the area of Judea. And so everybody who resided in the area of Judea, Idumeans and others, Assyrians who would come in, Babylonians, they all were just considered Judeans because you reside. I mean, we're in Israel, so we're Israelis, basically. You could be able to refer to all of us, but we have our own unique ethnic identities. But because we live, within a specific region with a name, then obviously that's just the name that we're all called. But it has nothing to do with ethnicity. It had nothing to do with your connection biblically. It had nothing to do with your tribal affiliation. And so that's something that a lot of people just don't understand. Even Jews don't understand that. And that's why Jews have a major issue with defining Judaism today, because, some people would define it as you being born to a mother who was a Jew, or you converted to Judaism. Some people say, it's just an ancestry Other people say that, you hold to the biblical tenets.
Mm-hmm.
There's no clear definition for
Right.
what a Jew is, because you're trying to play with something that has a very clear definition already, but now you're trying to redefine it, based on
Someone's interpretation. And
based on other
all
interpretations.
hundreds of years of, yeah.
So you get lost in that.
Yeah.
So we are Hebrew Israelites, not because of Prophet F.S. Cherry in the 1800s,
Mm-hmm.
or William Crowder, or Arnold Josiah Ford, or Rabbi Matthews,
Mm-hmm.
or the Honorable Ben Ami, or Prince Asiel, or Prince Shaliach, or anybody. We're not Hebrew Israelites because of them. They didn't come up with this name.
Right.
Hebrew Israelites is simply giving you a very clear indication of where our progeny continues through.
Mm-hmm.
So because technically you could also refer to the children of Muhammad, Arabs and others, who had come through, Hagar's son. Okay, Ishmael.
Okay.
Ishmael. So the children of Ishmael can technically be called also Hebrews, because Abraham was a Hebrew.
Right.
But when we say that we are Hebrew Israelites, then we're indicating that we are Hebrews through the progeny of Isaac, not through Ishmael, and we are Israelites because that continued also through the progeny of Jacob as opposed to through Esau. And we are Judeans because we come from the tribe of Judah, but those who don't come from the tribe of Judah, they are Israelites, generally.
Okay. All right. So I want to go into next, going to the deportation in 2021. Political science. What made you choose that field?
Really don't know. I really don't know. I don't. I said to myself when I was already in high school that I wanted to go and study at IDC.
Okay.
The interdisciplinary. Today is called Reichman University.
Okay.
In Herzliya. But I said to myself that I wanted to go study there because, one, they put on this conference every year, right? That they brought all the influential people of Israel and other places in the world to this conference so they can be able to share their ideas. So, it's the top military generals and the head of the Mossad and the head of the Shin Bet. And, sometimes they bring in political figures, and sometimes they bring in, major business people. So I said I want to go to that college because I want to go to that conference, right? I want to.
And you could only go to the conference if you were a student there?
Well, I thought so.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if it's that way. I never even checked into it because I was a student there.
Right.
Right. But I said to myself that I want to go to I want to be there at this conference with the meeting of these minds. And I understood that this is where, at the least in Israel, the top leaders of tomorrow study. Right.
Okay.
So all of these people are coming together, international Jews from Israel, whatever, studying in this institution. And not only, I didn't see it just as an opportunity to be able to gain, some information through, gaining a degree, but because all these people are there, then you create relationships with these people where later on you don't know where you're going to be and where they're going to be, but it's always good to, have friends, because I know, people today that they're in some major places, people who study with me or whatever, and I can call them up. Hey, I need you to come through for me or whatever. Some of them, I'm sure that in a few years from now, they'll be in politics. Some people will be in banking. Some people,
but they'll be in key positions.
And key positions. And we went to school together, and we maintained those relationships all throughout.
Right.
And so I just said that I wanted to go there just because of that. I want to be in that kind of environment.
Right.
I want to be where if these are all going to be the leaders of tomorrow, they're going to be in key positions. I want to be there with them.
Do you anticipate yourself being a leader at some point in the future? You're already a leader in many ways.
Honestly, I don't even sit down and think about that.
No.
I don't ever think about
It's
that.
not your desire. That's not your focus and your goal.
I just try and do what I try and use, my abilities, my connections, and my heart to do things that I know that should have been done a long time ago, and I know that they're right to do.
People.
Yeah.
Okay.
More than that, I don't really think about because if it was really about benefiting me in some way, I don't necessarily get any I don't get any benefit from it. Like we fought the deportation case, but I already have status. I already have citizenship.
Right. So it wasn't for you, so to speak, or as an individual.
There was nothing in it for me.
Right.
Besides helping my people.
Right.
And so I don't see myself I'm not an official spokesperson in no capacity for the community. I'm not in an official leadership position. I'm none of that.
Right.
But I know what I know. And
you use what
I
you
use
know
what I know to help my people.
Right.
And I allow the Holy Spirit to be able to use me as a vessel. So I know it's not me. I mean, if you ask me right now about anything that I did up until now, I could have never did that myself. So I know there had to be
you were guided and led, and
I didn't know what in the world I was doing.
Right.
I really didn't. I really didn't.
But you do it so well.
Don't I really? If you ask me to go back and repeat, I had to sit down the other day when they gave us the verdict that all of the saints had received or are going to receive, residency status in Israel or whatever. When I went back and I looked at the process, and I looked at all that we had done, going through the kibbutzim,
and we started in 2021.
2021,
right?
Going to the kibbutzim, going to the Knesset, meeting with all of these social leaders, gathering all of these youth groups, getting donations from some of these social organizations, and getting people involved internationally, getting the media to support us in which way. How was lobbying all of these, getting meetings with the ministers and this and that, and talking to famous people or whatever. I couldn't have did if it was just me.
Right.
That wasn't my doing.
Right.
That wasn't my doing. And I tell anybody, that was a higher force that was leading the way, and that was directing me, and there was a lot of background noise, trying to distort me from my path, distract me, divert me from my path, distracting me, trying to cause me to lose faith and to become faint-hearted. All of that was going on.
I was there, so
you know. So it was a lot.
So I definitely can understand what you're saying. So before we get into I do want to go more into the fight, but before we do that, let me see. Do you want to talk about any of your international activities and travels, being a social media activist and an advocate? You have really done a lot. You really have. You just.
I don't even pay attention to it. I just do.
You just do.
I just do it. Because even with social media, right?
I remember once asking you something about social media when I first started working with you 4 years ago, and you was like, "Dora, I don't know anything about social media.
I really didn't.
I don't know anything about making videos." I'm like, and I look up, I'm like, this dude got millions of followers. He all over the place. He making a video every day. What do you mean he don't know?
I don't. If anybody asks me, how do you manage to influence and to make video, I just do it. Just something comes to my mind and say, okay, I just want to share this concept or whatever. And I don't even do it with all of my stuff. Sometimes I just keep things to myself, like, okay, I'm not gonna even say nothing about that or whatever. But I just share. I just share and then go on about my business. I don't even have a chance to be able to really go back and to read comments and to read reviews. I don't focus on that too much. I share it. And when I get feedback from people who are speaking to me directly or whatever, then I could be able to kind of understand. Okay, maybe Okay, I understand you. Or I get you. Maybe some things that need to be changed, some things that need to be upgraded or whatever. And then it also is kind of a gauge for me because the more I talk about things that are inside of me, right, the more I'm becoming more familiar with a lot of stuff that I have inside that I didn't even know that I had inside. And it's just kind of a concentration or compilation of books and of things that I've watched and conversations that I've had and and muscle memory from my ancestors, and all these things, that you kind of remember the more you talk about them, right? And I think one thing about the process of creation, I used to think that creation was in two phases, right? From thought to reality. But then I realized that it was from thought to word to reality, right? And the more I speak things, that are in my thoughts, then I can be able to actualize them, because now I'm familiarizing myself with information from inside of me that I didn't even know existed.
Woo! That's a powerful thing.
It's
a knowing that's at your cellular level, that you know, but you don't know how you know. You don't know why you know.
No idea. No idea. I had times where people would even reach out, say things to me or whatever, and ask me certain questions, and then I pull on this information. I'm like, where in the world did this come from? Like, how did I know that? I didn't even know that I knew.
Right, exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Knew people's names and knew certain events that had happened and when they happened and dates and all this kind of stuff.
It's powerful.
I'm like, where did this come from? But then I realized, you sit down and you read 3 hours in the night before you go to sleep, and then probably 2 hours in the morning. As soon as you wake up, I try to get. If I don't fall asleep at night, then I try to get. And then during the day or whatever, I probably listen to like podcasts, audio books, and videos on YouTube.
Right.
Throughout the day. But I try. It's as much as I can. It don't happen all the time. Sometimes I cheat. I try to hold on to it as much as I can.
Right.
And it's interesting, because the more I invest time in reading and then seeking information, and then the more I realize what I don't know, how much I don't know.
Right.
So the more I get, the more I know, is the more I realize how much I don't know.
Exactly.
And it caused me to then remain in that loop of
right.
And that's why I understand when they say that that you could never stop studying.
Never.
Right?
Never.
Because there's always something else that, even if you got to this point, this is not the end all be all.
Not the end all
right?
be all.
And there's something further.
More.
There's something more. And then you get to that more and you're like, it's something more. And so the more doors you open, you realize it's another door.
Right.
And another door and another door. And so it actually, to be honest with you, it excites me, because then, it puts me in a consistent mood of study.
Right.
But also that studying, like I say, at one point or another, it actualizes itself in reality. And so, it could actualize itself in me knowing then how to approach certain situations, because I may have, studied the psychology of certain things.
Right.
It may help me to converse with certain people from certain religions or whatever, because, I invested time in studying and understanding, their religions. It may help me also, to be able to navigate my way through certain situations or whatever, because I studied, certain patterns of people who were in certain positions or whatever, or who wanted to accomplish certain things, and these things are just called back to memory, and then you look up and you acting them out, and so that's exciting for me.
Okay.
That's exciting for me, and I just
keep it going.
More.
Keep it going. Okay, we're gonna take a little detour. These are my little trivia cards. This is our little trivia, right?
Okay.
So each color is a different subject. Some of them are my favorite things. Some of them are my opinion or my thoughts on something. The blue ones are were you there for a specific activity or event, and fill in the blanks. Okay. So those are the categories. Okay. So what you have to do is you pick what you want, but you can't read it. Okay. Why? Because I put the answers on the card.
Oh, okay, all right.
And I don't have anywhere else to put the answers. So you pick it, give it to me, I'll read it, and then we're going to answer it. And if it's something you don't want to answer, we'll just skip it.
Okay. Let me see. I just picked it.
Okay, this one right here. Yeah. So this is a were you there? Skutanatani Tachon. No, you were not there.
I wasn't.
Have you ever gone down there to even look at where we used to live?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. I never been in the apartments themselves, right? But I used to go down on the block, because we used to hang out down there.
Oh, I didn't know.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
all right.
Yeah.
Once we moved out of there, I never went back.
Yeah, we as young people, we used to hang out down at Coon.
Okay, pick you a couple more. This one is your personal thoughts on. Well, we already did this. What it means to you to be a Hebrew Israelite.
talked about that already. Yeah. Okay.
So we did that.
Okay. The other one.
Okay, yellow one are my favorites. Your favorite hobbies?
My favorite hobbies. I love parties.
Okay. Can you dance?
No. but it don't matter. I'm enjoying myself anyway.
Your Ema is the ultimate
No, my Ema and
dancer.
my Abba was a dancer as well. What to do? What to do? Nope. And, I like to travel.
Okay.
I love to travel.
Some of the places you've traveled to.
Ooh.
So you traveled to Ghana because you talked about the woman you met in the market that talked about Hebrewism.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was in Ghana, and I was in Mallorca, right off of Spain.
Okay.
And I was all throughout the United States.
Okay.
I was throughout Europe and England, and then Spain, and then where else did we go? Man, I done been so many places. I can't even. And Cyprus, and then I done been so many.
Okay,
I can't even remember.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, pick 2 or 3 more, and then we'll move on to another one of the favorites.
Okay.
Thing to do for fun.
Things to do for fun. Man, call some friends over.
Call some friends
Call
over.
some friends over.
Okay.
You know, for a night of of laughs,
Okay.
of fun, and that. I mean, that's the thing that I
That
love.
you like
Or
to
going over to my friends or family.
Right.
You know, those are bowling.
Okay. All right.
Things. Yeah.
This one right here is fill in the blank. In what year was the first Yom Kareem celebrated? Idea.
No idea.
But you might know this part. Who is it celebrated in honor of?
Of Nancy Gabriel Godot.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
Okay, this will be the last one.
Okay.
Okay, were you there?
No, I like this one. Let's do a couple more. Can we do a couple more?
All right,
Yeah,
okay. Were you there? Rehovot Moshav.
Nope.
Okay.
Nope. My Abba was.
Your Abba was, yeah.
Yeah.
Because he used to be like the manager up there, right?
Yeah.
Right. I worked up there for, I might have lasted a week or 2, and that was it. I came back home, I was like, no.
That was too hard.
Well, in those days, you didn't really have a choice. If everybody was sent, you had to go to the job.
You had to go, okay.
So I got sick. The universe knew that I didn't need to be there.
All right.
So I got sick.
I got you. Okay.
Okay. Fill in the blank. Date of the first New World Passover celebrated in Israel.
The date. I know. So we celebrated, because for the last couple of years, we were saying it was 50 years. If I'm not mistaken, it was 1973, was it?
Almost. 1974.
Okay, 1974.
Mm-hmm. May 15th, 19...
I was close.
Yeah, you were close.
Yeah.
Your personal thoughts on healing, forgiveness, trauma, mental health. You touched on it a little bit earlier when you talked about the youth.
I think those are super important for people to be able to actually release, a lot of things that may be holding them back. And at times, I think we also, not at times, I think we all need to get some type of counseling, some type of healing, some type of assistance in that area or whatever, because there may be a lot of things that we have, that are kind of backed up in us that we don't even know. And there are a lot of things that may even be preventing us from being able to move forward.
Exactly.
These are hindrances because of previous experiences that we've had, and we don't even know that these things are still affecting us right now. And so it may come out in different ways. It may come out with your relationship with your spouse. It may
The
come out,
symptoms we talked about earlier.
these are symptoms. These things come out in different ways or whatever, and you don't necessarily understand. Why is this person spazzing out this way?
Right.
You may overreact to a certain situation or whatever that may be a trigger to you,
Right.
and you don't necessarily even know that that's why you're reacting in that way.
Yeah, behaving the way that you behave.
And then other people definitely don't know unless they understand and know what you have been through or whatever. But sometimes they may think you just cool bananas, you out of your mind or whatever. But they don't know what a lot of us had to endure.
Right.
A lot of people had to endure some things that they may not ever talk about.
Right.
But it's still affecting them, to a point where it causes, some sharp reactions,
Right.
or it affect them in areas of their lives,
Right.
that prevents them from being able to be balanced,
Right.
because of these experiences. So
Right.
those things are serious.
They're very, very serious. And one of the things that I want to share at this point is, a lot of times when people hear the word forgiveness, they get upset, especially if you've been traumatized. Because when you use that slave mentality or understanding of forgiveness, of turning the other cheek, but something that I learned on my healing journey that took me well over 10 years was forgiveness is for me.
Yeah.
It's for me. It's not about the other person. It doesn't mean that I have to allow them into my space.
Yeah.
It does not mean that I have to love them. It means that whatever it is that they did to me, I no longer allow it to control me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And to cause me to feel a certain way. When you realize that I'm killing myself by choosing to hold on to this, you find a way. It's not easy. If it's therapy, if it's journaling, whatever it is, you find a way so that it doesn't continue to consume you. So
No, that's real, though, because I know also, just from biochemistry, and alchemy, that that biochemically our bodies are made up in such a way where the thoughts that we have, the experiences that we have, the experience, the things that we take along with us, they affect the molecular makeup of our body,
Exactly.
right? Of our DNA.
Exactly.
They affect it in such a way where the thoughts that we have could cause us to be sick.
Yes.
Because, certain thoughts, would cause certain biochemical reactions
yeah.
in our bodies that actually send certain signals, to our bodies, saying that we are experiencing, even if the experience that you had was a year ago, but you're just thinking about it right now, your body is reacting to it now, as if it's just happening right now.
Yeah.
Right? And these things are, they actually moving, these chemicals through your blood, and your body is reacting in such a way where you could actually find yourself sick.
Yeah.
Really for real sick
Yeah.
from a situation that had happened so long ago, and the thought of it just comes in your
thought of
mind.
it, yeah.
It causes you to experience,
As
the
right
same
now,
way, the
all
same way
over
your whole
again.
body was,
Yeah.
quivering and reacting. Then your body, every time you have that thought,
Yeah.
your body reacts to it in that same way. So, these things are biologically, affecting
Yeah.
us in such a way where we don't even know it.
Right.
And I think that's something we should also, invest in understanding the molecular reactions to certain things, biologically, biochemically,
Right.
and how those things, those thoughts, those feelings, those whatever could affect us in such a way where you look at somebody and they actually becoming sick from an experience that they had because it's eating them up, like literally eating at them,
up. Yeah.
and
sometimes it can not even be a thought. Sometimes it can be a smell. It can be a sound.
something that reminds
Something
you,
that triggers you and takes you back. So I would definitely admonish everybody. Everybody needs to have some type of, some reflection, some therapy, some meditation.
Yeah.
But we all have to heal.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So,
let me see.
okay, this is gonna be our last one.
Okay.
Okay, favorites. Your favorite fruit, your favorite vegetable, your favorite meal. Favorite fruit.
Favorite fruit. Man, I think it's a tie between mangoes and apples.
Red apples.
The yellow one.
The yellow,
one.
the yellow.
The yellow
apples.
was the sweet, sweet yellow ones. Yeah.
We used to call those banana apples when we were kids.
Okay.
The specific mango, Maya mangoes, the green mangoes,
Maya's
Maya
mango.
there you go.
You know what? And I add something on to that. Probably some ice cream with it.
Yeah.
Some meat. Okay.
Your favorite vegetable?
Favorite vegetable? Avocado. Yeah.
But really, avocado's a fruit.
Well, that's true too. Yeah. Man.
So,
all right,
so it could be both.
What fruit do I do? I mean, what vegetable do I like? I don't even know.
What's the last vegetable you remember eating?
Cucumber.
Okay. Your favorite meal?
My favorite meal.
Somebody
Will it have to be like one thing?
The meal. Like
or
your
compilation of. Okay. So cheese potatoes or macaroni and cheese.
Okay, as long as it got some cheese.
Yeah, right. As long as it got cheese. Greens.
Okay.
Dressing.
Okay.
And I think some battered tofu.
Okay.
With some cheese and
some more cheese on the battered tofu.
Yeah. I don't know. That all of those cod meals.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. With lasagna.
Oh yeah, with lasagna. Then you got you got your pasta, you got your cheese, you got everything all in there together.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're closing it out. I do want to talk about leading the fight against the deportation of the saints from the land. How did you get involved with that? You did talk about it a little bit, the process, what it was like, some of the, and the significant victory. Let's talk about that.
Yeah. We can start with that, the significant victory, because everything that happened before, as far as I'm concerned, doesn't even really matter like that. So long as we got the victory.
Yeah.
Because we set out for a goal and an objective, and we managed to secure that goal, that objective, and that was to secure the saints' presence in this land legally. Those who hadn't been able to really, express themselves in the most effective way, because they just lacked legal status, so they didn't have access to certain institutions that they needed, and they weren't able to work like they needed to, and they can't leave the country, and all
of the things that go with it.
That's living in hell.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely things that those of us that had status took for granted.
You're right.
I can go to the Kupak Kalim if I want to. I can have a bank account. I can do this. I can do that. And never even thinking about those that didn't have access to that.
Yep. How did I get involved? We for years we had already been trying. I know Raphael and myself and Yair and others. We used to sit together with some of the leadership figures and strategize for ways to deal with three specific aspects or specific topics. Mm-hmm. One, housing. Two, the status. Mm-hmm. Three, the school.
Okay.
So we sat down for a long period of time, and at one point, people just stopped coming, and we really didn't accomplish nothing.
Right.
And so we took it upon ourselves to continue that, not just to give up, even though other people had kind of fallen off and weren't really active. And because, again, I don't know what other people's priorities were, but possibly they had other priorities, their families, other issues, because we deal with a lot of stuff within the community. So I'm not blaming anybody for not really taking it upon themselves. So we said that, okay, we then would lead the charge in a specific area, to try to get this going. And all throughout, obviously, communicating with leadership figures in regards to what it is we like to do. And, getting the blessing, but sometimes, we don't need to go, in that route. Okay, so no problem. So what's the alternative?
Yeah.
There's no alternative. Okay.
We talked about that earlier, not having an alternative.
Yeah, no problem. So if there's no alternative, so what we'll do then is just the fundamental thing, right? You all have given these people lists of saints for a long period of time, and they just simply ignored us. Right. At the least, the last period of time was in 2015 when the minister came and said we're gonna fix it, we're gonna have it all done, and the minister was down there in his office and just give me the list of all the saints who were, and then they received the list and just totally went blank on us. Right.
So from based on that list, that's what you went and tried to go ahead and get that reinitiated and get that dealt with.
The 2015 list, right? There was a 2015 list. I wasn't involved. They had given that list to Minister of Interior when he was down here, Ari Aderi, in 2015, when he had come back into the office of the Ministry of Interior in 2015. So when we initiated contact with the Minister of Interior and the Population Control Department, this was because we knew specific people, who were working in these spaces or whatever, and who had suggested that we, just give that list, put it back in their face again. Yeah. So it wasn't necessarily a list.
Right. It was a list that they already had. They hadn't done
they hadn't done nothing with it or
Okay.
whatever. And quite naturally, the reaction was, okay, just send us the list again. Now, I mean, you already have the list,
Right.
but I know that you didn't put this as a priority for yourself because
Right.
you can pick that list back up wherever you
Right.
put it, unless you put it in the trash, and now it's
Right.
gone. So no problem, we'll give you that list again. And so obviously we had communicated with leadership about the fact that we are initiating this again.
Right. Right.
So we're gonna have a meeting in the Ministry of Interior in August of 2020. August of 2020.
2020.
Yeah,
That was
August
during COVID.
Yeah, we had a meeting up there in the Ministry of Interior, and on the way back, and on the way back, we were just talking or whatever. He was just asking how did it go and who do we meet with, who do we talk to or whatever. We had told him that we were in the Ministry of Interior or the Population Control Department, and they were showing a desire to complete the procedure, right? Because they were saying that some new laws that come into effect that could be able to work in our favor. And we need to take advantage of this opportunity.
So initially, they were showing an interest in
They were
going
showing
ahead
interest.
and
They
doing
were showing
what needed to be
interest.
done.
They were showing interest. They were just saying, okay, we don't intend to go back on this again.
Okay.
We'll initiate, this process who don't have any legal status to make sure that we don't have to go back over this again.
Right.
Because it's in nobody's favor, not in ours, to have to come back up there again.
Right.
Because in the meantime, in between time, somebody who could have gotten it, they could have gotten it. So
Right.
why would we wait again, to
Right,
come
right,
back up
right.
there or whatever? So, we had initiated it internally. And so we got the list, and we presented that in August of 2020. And in April of 2021,
Is when they
after
sent
we
the
were talking to them
deportation
for a
letters.
long time, we were trying to understand. They were like, it's in a positive, it's on a positive note, and most likely we'll be selling this real quick, and it'll be finished in a little while, and I had all the recordings in my phone still until every day.
Right.
And so in April, I had come back from Dubai, celebrate my birthday, and Dora Tovita told me that she had gotten something in the mail, right? She said she had, so we started getting
excited.
because
wow.
we were like, okay, this is the end of it,
Right.
right? Because they said that they were going
Right.
to settle this, so we were like, okay, most likely that's what we've been waiting for this entire time, for them to receive that invitation to come up to the ministry to go ahead and do whatever you need to do to
Right.
get your legal status and finish with it.
Right.
And instead of that, they received these letters of deportation.
Right.
One person,
Then
another person, another person, another person. Meanwhile, we're talking to the Ministry of Interior and we're asking them, hold on now, y'all said something else, right? Besides the fact that y'all had ignored us for 5 years up until this point, right? From 2015 up until 2020, now it's 2021. Instead of you all following up on the agreement that y'all had made, y'all issuing these people deportation letters.
Right.
And so their reasoning for that was that nobody met any of the criteria. And so as a result of that, they wanted to, but nobody met the criteria, so they can't do it. And so they asked the saints to be out of Israel within 6 days.
Right. I remember that whole ball getting started.
Yeah.
So what was the criteria?
That people needed to be in Israel they should have been here before 1999, living here for at least 10 years, and should have had A5 status or something like that. Wrong or right, that didn't matter, because in 2003, the Minister of Interior, he directed the head of the Population Control Department to grant permanent residency to everybody. It really didn't matter how long you've been in Israel,
Right.
when did you come,
And
you
they
didn't do it.
on that.
They didn't do it. They just didn't do it. And so I just thought it was crazy, that you all say that y'all are going through this and we're going to complete this, and then you send people deportation letter.
Right.
Okay, cool. So this is my suggestion, right? We can settle this in this way, where you all call those letters back, finish with it. It was a mistake. We misunderstood. Somebody sent something out
Right.
from the office, and then we can go ahead from there. Or we could do it in a different way, no problem at all. Now, meanwhile, they were asking, even throughout the process, we want to make sure that you have the blessing of your leadership in Dimona to be able to do so. So I was trying to get the leadership internally to sign on that they support the idea, and they're giving us, empowering us with the ability to go up and conduct these conversations. Obviously not on our own, but we're going to come back and we're going to give results, but just representatives of everybody. And so that then became an issue. All of that came through. So when we finally got it, and they did, hold to the decision they were going to make for these people being out within 60 days. I'm like, cool, no problem. So I'll just use, because I had just come, I was just participating in a TV show, in the Great Race, or the Amazing Race, with my wife. Okay. And she was my girlfriend then. And I'm like, okay, no problem. So I'll just use, my media presence or whatever to upload this, or to bring some type of recognition or attention to it, and then let's just see how people respond to it. So I uploaded a picture. I wrote on the picture that I am threatened with deportation, and then under it, I gave a full explanation of the community of these people who were threatened with deportation, and the fact that if you want them to leave, then that means that you want the entire community to leave. If you refuse to give them any status, that means that you want to take all of our status, whatever status we have. So because we operate as one, so you're not going to do what you want to them and separate. That separation. So a lot. It really caught. And from that point, it was a protracted, heated battle. But that and I think it got worse because the more they saw that we were serious about what we were trying to do, the more they had. And so they didn't want to come out as the losers in this case. So instead of humbling out and just taking the back seat, they said we're gonna double down. We're gonna harden our hearts a little more. And so so they draw it out more. They drew it out more and more and more, and then each time it seemed like we were making little progress, then they go back on that progress. And it was a long drawn out protracted battle, and I know, because they told me to my face, like, y'all not getting nothing, and as a matter of fact, why would you go to the media? And like, why would I go to the media? Why wouldn't you settle this? Why don't you uphold the agreement that you made? We tried, but we they didn't meet any requirements. But you all go to the media, trying to make us look bad, calling us racist. So if you're not racist, then what are you? If this is not, because at the same time, we were looking at the war that had just broken out in Russia. Right, you had the Russia and Ukraine that had broken out, and they were saying that we have enough space to be able to accept 500,000 people. In the meantime, in Israel, you had 275,000 people who were illegal residents. Majority of them came from Eastern Europe. They refused to allow the 2,000, 3,000 Ethiopian brothers and sisters to come to Israel. So I'm just like, okay, well, I don't know another way to look at this. And, outside of the racial lens that you all are creating here, not us. We came to you in good faith. And you chose to go in a different direction. The more we continued, the more I started having more faith. Because initially, it was really hard to see the end. Because Israel said they're gonna do something.
They pretty much
they do it. And they do it with haste, especially if they have a major issue with you. And it wasn't the first time they were talking about deportation. They had deported some of our people in the past.
Exactly.
In the past.
This wasn't our first rodeo.
No, this wasn't our first rodeo. So I knew that they were intending to do what they said they were going to do. But we saw at a point that the things that started really shifting in our favor. Initially, when we went up to the ministry, to the tribunal court in Beersheba, we had the first court hearing, and we had presented everything. They had presented everything, and the judge had asked, why didn't you all uphold the agreement that was made in the past? From 2003, the Minister of Interior, and all these other cases where they had brought y'all this information, and even if y'all wanted to deport them, Why didn't y'all deport them in 2015 when they initially gave you the information? Why did you wait for 5 years?
Right.
For 6 years
until they came back.
Until they came back, and now you want to do it? What? So why didn't you do anything within that 5 year period of time? They didn't have any answer to that.
Of course not.
So I was like, okay, cool. Now we can turn up the heat more, you know.
And you turned it
and
up.
We turned the heat, and we turned up the heat, and we started getting everybody involved from everywhere, from politicians to sports stars to media people to human rights organizations to social, you know, organizations to, you know, to celebrities. I mean, everybody. We just got everybody involved. We said, hey, we need y'all. You know, come through for us. And as y'all would have it, they came through for us. They came through for us financially. They came through for us with that support, you know, coming out there when we went and we were protesting. They were coming out there with us. They uploaded their own campaigns online. These, you know, they wanted to come down here to Des Moines to show their solidarity with us. They started going with us to all of the meetings that we needed to go to, you know, with certain political figures or whatever. They started their own little lobby in the Knesset on our behalf to try and lobby the minister or whatever to, you know, to stop that. I mean, everything that could have happened, it was going on all at the same time. And so we realized, okay, we in the green now. But we didn't know when it would end because they weren't showing any signs of finishing. But as y'all would have it, things always, you know, play out in favor of those who are sincere, and justice has to prevail. And so, you know, I mean, we didn't ask for nothing that we didn't deserve. You know, and we didn't ask for nothing that was just crazy. I mean, what people want to just live, you know,
that were born here and been here for 20 years,
want to contribute,
have no citizenship anywhere else, and how you going to send them?
What are you going to do with them? What are you going to do with them? You want them to leave? And go where? I mean, you talking about the fact that 16,000 people are leaving Israel a year almost, you know, because of the wars, because of everything. You know, you have a whole, you know, population in Israel of 2 million people, ultra orthodox, who don't want to serve, who don't want to contribute. But then you have this community, this small community of people who are contributing, who have been contributing, who want to contribute. And you reject them on what basis? If you say that you need people and you need this, on what basis?
Based on this.
Yes, so that was the only basis. And so we realized that, we understood, and they understood that we did that. And so it's like, okay, well, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. It's probably gonna take a long time, but at the end of the day, you know, we have to win. We have to win, because it has to be. It would be a shame on those elements of truth and justice if they would have let this go against us. But the arc of the moral universe is just, and it had to come out this way. Why did it take so long? I don't know. Maybe it had to just test us, you know. But whatever happened, it happened.
So with receiving the A5, which is the temporary, what is the process for making that permanent?
So some people after 2 years and some people after 4 years.
How do they determine?
They just wrote it on a piece of paper. And there's no determination.
There's no criteria.
Oh. No, sorry. There's no criteria. They just 4 years because they said so. And the people through the humanitarian court just 2 years because they said so. And so after that period of time, I guess they'll automatically be eligible to submit for permanent residence status.
But you still have to submit. It's not automatic that you get it. You have to submit. So we could find ourselves 2-4 years from now revisiting some of this foolishness with them and you know, and if we have to, then all we just go take a breather and get back in the fight. I hope that we don't have to do that. I should pray now.
You know, I pray that we don't have to do that. But if we do have to do that, then we're not going to give up.
Well, let me ask you something. I mean, we still have other people that don't have status that were not a part of that court case. What about them?
So you remember you had the 49 people who were threatened with deportation, who were receiving letters, right? Those families. But then you had another about 110 people. So
we didn't Yeah.
that we didn't deal with them.
Yeah.
So the priority was another 90 people. So the priority were the people who were threat rotation
Right,
first
exactly,
to prevent that from happening. Then after we finish with them, then bring all those other cases, to the court, because we had submitted all of those cases all in all and said, oh, these are all the people who don't have,
Right.
proper status in Israel. So
then
now
the fight really still is not over.
it's not over. It's not over. But at least we got over the major hump.
Yeah, we got over the actual threat.
Yeah, the actual threat.
Although those other people that don't have status, they didn't receive a deportation letter, but they can still be threatened with deportation.
They can still be threatened with deportation. So what we want to do, we want to make sure that we settle all of these things. If we got to do it through the court, and we'll do it through the court. If we have to do it, political ways, but nonetheless, we're gonna settle all of these cases, whatever it takes for us to be able to do so. But I mean, obviously, everything is a fight. Everything is a fight. But you gotta stay in the game.
Yeah.
You gotta stay in the game, and we stayed in the game. And so the rest of the people who didn't, who don't have nothing, well, they just have to, rock regular. I know they probably don't have no patience, and I'm sure they probably a little bitter, seeing the other people, what's name, but I mean, slowly but surely.
It's crazy, and then with all the turmoil, political turmoil that's going on in the country, it's like this really gets pushed to the back burner, and it's not relevant because I mean they're trying to oust. It's crazy. It's crazy. Okay, so my very last question. Okay, we're down to the last question. We've had a lot of conversation.
Yeah.
Do you have any goals, dreams, visions, etc., that you haven't yet accomplished that you'd like to accomplish?
I want to visit every country that I can.
Okay.
On the planet. Well, besides that, I really haven't thought about a lot of stuff.
Okay.
I really want to just travel.
Okay.
Take this time out, and now that I have a baby girl as well, I want to be able to give her those type of experiences as well. Going. I think that's for me, that's a major thing. And just to see us thriving as well.
Right.
I really do believe that we have, the ability to be able to go back to the heydays of what we had here. But in a different generation, in another way. But we just have to really work at that, and I think that's one of the things that I really would like to accomplish. I looked at I remember that in 1975, the Nation of Islam, under the Honorable Elijah Muhammad in America, fell after he passed away in 1973. And, they tried to keep it going for another 2 years, but it kind of failed. And everybody went their own ways and did whatever they was going to do. And then the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, he started back in 1978 to rebuild the Nation of Islam once again. And I mean, they obviously they couldn't go back to the days of Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Malcolm X, but at the least, they got it back on track where even today, Minister Farrakhan is the most prominent black leader in America today. And the Nation of Islam is, continue to grow. They're doing a lot of great things or whatever. But that just, give me the feeling that even with us, it's not a lost cause. Even if we may not be, where we like to be. It may seem like, all right, we kind of at the end of the process, ain't nothing else here. We came to Israel, did whatever we did. Now everybody's going on about their way or whatever. I still don't believe that.
It has to be more than that.
I know that you all didn't come here for that. So, to just come and to say, all right, check, we came to Israel, we was there. And we built a community, and that community lasted for 50 years, and then that's it. I find it hard to believe that was, all she wrote. So I think one of my greatest desires is to once again, put us back on that track, of solidifying ourselves here, but in a way where we have, power and influence and and institutions and enterprises and another level of excitement, and involvement of the youth and for the elders, to look and to be proud of what they have accomplished in the continuation of what it is that they had built, as opposed to just, passing away or whatever with a broken heart.
Yeah.
Because, they invested so much, into it, just to see it kind of crumble. And then, they depart here physically,
Right.
with a feeling of just, disappointment.
Right.
Because this is not what they intended it to be.
Right.
And,
That wasn't the end all be all.
it was just, it's just a broken heart. Like, this can't be it.
Yeah.
So I think those are the two things: travel and just to, put us back. Put us.
So is there anything that we haven't talked about that you feel like you would like to share before we close out?
I think we talked about everything. I think we talked about everything. And if I can think about anything else, then we'll be here for another 2 hours, having some conversation.
We have to go.
Yeah.
We probably could have done 3 sessions with you.
Yeah.
Because everything in its own self could be a topic in its own podcast.
Entire conversation.
Yeah. But Ahk Ashriel, I truly appreciate you. I truly appreciate you, and I pray that all of you all that will watch this will enjoy it as much as I enjoyed being here with Ashriel doing this. And please continue to support the Living Chronicles podcast. If you're interested in participating, by all means, give me a call. This is open to any and everyone that is or has been a part of this community. There is a code of conduct because we are going to keep the integrity of the project. But please give me a call. Other than that, Toda. Bye, y'all.
Oh, this is nice. Oh, that's nice. Man, I appreciate you doing that.